The first sign that something had fallen from the sky was not the explosion. It was the silence that came before it. Ethan Cole had been working in the far corner of his farm when every bird suddenly stopped singing. Even the old animals inside the wooden barn became quiet. Ethan slowly straightened his back and looked toward the dark evening sky. A few seconds later, a burning object tore through the clouds like a falling star. It was too large to be a meteor and too fast to be an ordinary ship. Ethan watched it disappear behind a line of hills. Then the ground jumped beneath his boots. A deep explosion rolled across the farm. His chickens screamed. His old tractor shook. Several metal tools fell from the wall of his storage shed. Ethan stood still for a moment. "Well," he muttered, looking toward the smoke rising above the hills. "That's probably not good." Greenfall was a quiet planet. That was exactly why Ethan had chosen it. He had spent enough years working in crowded human colonies and listening to machines, traffic, and people arguing about things that did not matter. When he finally saved enough money, he bought a small farm on the edge of Greenfall's southern valley. The land was cheap because nobody wanted it. There were no large cities nearby, no important spaceports, no rich minerals. Most people believed the planet had nothing special to offer. Ethan liked that. He had built a simple house, repaired an old barn, planted crops, and learned to live without depending on anyone. His days were peaceful. He woke with the sun, worked until his arms hurt, fed the animals, repaired whatever broke, and slept deeply at night. Nothing exciting ever happened, until something fell from the sky and landed close enough to destroy half a hill. Ethan returned to the house and opened a locked cabinet. He removed an old pulse rifle. It was not a military weapon. It was mostly used to scare away large predators and cut through thick brush. Still, Ethan checked the power cell and placed a small knife on his belt. Then he climbed into his old ground vehicle and drove toward the smoke. The road ended after a few minutes, so he continued across rough grass and loose stone. When he reached the hill, the sight below made him stop the vehicle. A crater had been torn into the ground. Trees around it had been burned black. Smoke rose into the evening air. Small pieces of glowing metal were scattered everywhere. Ethan expected to see a damaged spacecraft at the center. Instead, he saw something moving. He climbed down carefully. The pulse rifle remained in his hands. At first, the creature looked like a large black lizard. Then it lifted its head, and Ethan understood that it was something far stranger. It had long limbs, dark scales, 2 damaged wings, and a tail covered with sharp points. Its eyes glowed faintly blue through the smoke. One side of its body was covered in blood. A deep wound crossed its chest. The creature looked at Ethan. Ethan looked back. Neither moved. Then the creature growled. It was not a normal animal sound. The growl seemed to shake the air around them. Ethan slowly raised the rifle. The creature's eyes narrowed. Ethan expected it to attack. Instead, it tried to stand. Its legs shook. It took one step and immediately collapsed. Ethan stared at it for several seconds. "You're in bad shape," he said. The creature did not answer. Of course, Ethan did not expect it to. He carefully moved closer. The creature growled again. Yes, I know. You're dangerous." Ethan looked at the massive wound. "But you're also bleeding all over my hill." The creature stared at him as if it could not understand what it was hearing. Ethan had seen wild animals before. He knew how to treat injuries. He did not know what species this creature belonged to, but he understood that if he left it there, it would probably die. Ethan sighed. "Don't bite me." That was the beginning of a decision that would later change the future of the galaxy. The creature was much heavier than Ethan expected. He could not carry it alone, so he returned to his vehicle, brought several straps, and spent almost an hour pulling the injured animal onto the cargo platform. The creature woke twice. Each time, Ethan stopped and waited for it to calm down. It could easily have killed him. Somehow it did not. By the time Ethan reached his barn, the sky had become completely dark. He placed the creature on a thick layer of old blankets and activated the medical scanner he kept for his animals. The machine gave several warning signals and then displayed a message Ethan had never seen before. Unknown biology. Multiple energy sources detected. Internal structure not recognized. Ethan stared at the screen. Very helpful. He cleaned the wound as carefully as he could. The creature remained awake. It watched him every second. Ethan could feel those blue eyes following his movements. "You can relax," Ethan said while applying medicine to the damaged scales. "If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have dragged you all the way home. The creature's eyes narrowed again. Ethan continued working. Outside, the wind moved through the crops. Inside, an ancient being watched a human farmer with growing confusion. The creature was not an animal. His name was Rex. He was one of the last void dragons. Across the galaxy, his kind was feared by soldiers, hunted by powerful cultivators, and remembered in stories that had survived for thousands of years. Rex had destroyed warships. He had crossed dangerous regions of space where ordinary life could not survive. He had seen kings kneel before him. Yet now he was lying helplessly on a pile of blankets while a human spoke to him, as if he were an injured farm animal. Rex could have revealed his true form. He could have killed the human with a single burst of energy. Under normal conditions, he would have done exactly that to anyone who approached him while he was wounded. But something was wrong. His body had almost no energy left. His escape through the void had failed. His enemies had damaged him badly. If he tried to fight now, he would die. So Rex remained silent and watched. Ethan finished treating the wound, stepped back, and looked satisfied. There, that should stop the bleeding. Rex slowly opened his mouth. Ethan immediately raised a finger. I know what you're going to say. Rex stopped. Ethan pointed toward the floor. No biting. Rex closed his mouth. For the first time in centuries, the void dragon felt something strange. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was complete confusion. Ethan left the barn and returned a few minutes later with a large bowl of meat. Rex stared at it. I don't know what you eat, Ethan admitted, but I figured meat was a safe guess. He placed the bowl several steps away and backed off. Rex slowly pulled himself forward. He sniffed the food. Then he began eating. Ethan smiled. See? We're making progress. Over the next several days, Rex remained inside the barn. Ethan continued his normal work. Every morning, he brought food. Every evening, he checked the creature's injuries. He never asked where Rex came from. He never tried to place a tracking device on him. He never called the authorities. That last part surprised Rex the most. Across the galaxy, information about a void dragon was worth enough money to purchase entire planets. Yet Ethan simply repaired fences and complained about the weather. On the fourth morning, Rex heard Ethan speaking to someone through a communication device. No, I didn't see any ship, Ethan said. Just heard an explosion. Probably a meteor. Rex lifted his head. Ethan knew the statement was false. The human was protecting him. Why? Rex did not understand. The next day, Rex finally found the strength to stand. Ethan entered the barn carrying a bucket of water and stopped when he saw the creature on all four legs. Well, look at you. Rex stared at him. Ethan smiled. Feeling better? Slowly, Rex spread his damaged wings. His body was still weak, but he could move. Ethan stepped aside and opened the large barn doors. Cold morning air entered the building. Beyond the doors stretched the green fields, the crops, the distant hills, and the wide open sky. Ethan placed the bucket on the ground. You can go if you want. Rex did not move. Ethan waited. Seriously, you're not my pet. The void dragon looked past him. Something had caught his attention. Beneath the soil of the farm, he could feel it. At first, Rex believed his damaged senses were deceiving him. He closed his eyes and focused. The energy was still there. It was deep beneath the land. Ancient, pure, powerful beyond anything he had expected to find on a forgotten human farming planet. Rex slowly stepped outside. Ethan watched him with curiosity. The creature crossed the yard and moved toward the vegetable fields. The closer Rex came to the soil, the stronger the energy became. He stopped between two rows of crops. His scales began to glow. A cold wind moved around him. Ethan frowned. You okay? Rex ignored him. He lowered his body and placed one claw against the earth. The moment he touched the ground, power rushed through him. His damaged body trembled. His wounds began to close faster. Energy entered his bones, his blood, and the damaged core inside his chest. Rex opened his eyes in shock. This was impossible. A place like this should have been discovered long ago. Powerful empires would have fought wars for such land. Ancient cultivators would have built temples here. Yet a human farmer was growing vegetables above it. Ethan walked closer. Hey, don't tear up the soil. Rex looked at him. For the first time, he decided to speak. His voice was deep and rough. Human. Ethan froze. The bucket slipped from his hand and hit the ground. Water spilled across his boots. You can talk. Rex stared at him. Yes. Ethan looked at the creature for several seconds. Then he nodded. The next morning, Ethan woke to a sound that made him sit straight up in bed. It was not an alarm. It was not thunder. It sounded like something enormous was breathing outside his house. For several seconds, Ethan remained still beneath his blanket. Then he looked toward the window. A pale blue light was shining through the curtains. "Rex," he said with a tired sigh. Ethan pulled on his boots and walked outside. The morning sun had only begun to rise, but the farm already looked different. A thin blue mist covered the ground. Small drops of light floated above the grass before disappearing into the air. At the far side of the vegetable field, Rex sat perfectly still. The dragon had changed during the night. His scales looked darker and cleaner. The deep wound on his chest had almost disappeared. A circle of strange symbols glowed faintly beneath him, pressed into the soil. Ethan stood there for a moment. Then he looked toward his vegetable field and became concerned about something far more important. "Are those my tomatoes glowing?" Rex slowly opened his eyes. The blue light disappeared. He turned his head toward the farmer. They absorbed some excess energy. Ethan walked closer and examined one of the plants. The tomatoes were larger than usual. The leaves looked healthy despite the cold night. "Can they still be eaten?" Rex stared at him. "That is your concern?" "They're good tomatoes." Rex slowly looked away. Ethan had already learned that Rex could be difficult. The dragon spoke only when he wanted to. Most of the time, he simply watched. He watched Ethan work. He watched the animals. He watched the sunrise and sunset, as if he had never seen a peaceful world before. Sometimes Ethan would turn around and find Rex sitting near the house, staring at him while he repaired a machine. "What?" Ethan would ask. Rex would usually answer, "Nothing." Ethan did not believe him, but he had stopped asking. As the days passed, Rex continued cultivating on the far side of the farm. Ethan had expected strange things to happen, but he had not expected everything to become strange. The crops began growing faster. A small apple tree that had barely produced any fruit suddenly became heavy with bright red apples. The chickens started laying more eggs. Ethan's old farm dog, Max, became unusually energetic and began chasing animals that were much larger than him. Even the water from the small well tasted cleaner. Ethan blamed Rex for everything. "You did something to the water." Rex lowered his head toward the bucket. "I did not. The chickens are acting weird." "They are chickens." Max just jumped over the fence. Rex looked at the dog running proudly through the field. "Perhaps he is talented." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Don't encourage him." Rex had no idea why he enjoyed these conversations. They were simple, pointless. Sometimes they made no sense at all. Yet the ancient dragon found himself waiting for Ethan to return from his work. For most of his life, Rex had known only power, danger, and survival. He had lived among creatures who respected strength and feared weakness. No one had ever complained to him about chickens. No one had ever asked him to move because he was sitting too close to a row of potatoes. Ethan treated him like a strange neighbor. It was a feeling Rex did not understand, and that made him uncomfortable. One afternoon, Ethan was repairing his tractor when a heavy metal part slipped from the machine. It fell directly toward his leg. Rex was several meters away, but he moved instantly. The dragon lifted one claw. A burst of invisible energy stopped the part in the air. Ethan looked up. The metal object floated above his head. Rex slowly lowered it to the ground. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. "Thanks." Rex nodded. Then he returned to his usual place. Ethan stared at him. "You could have done that yesterday when I was moving those fence posts." Rex opened one eye. "You did not ask. I thought you were resting." "I was." Ethan looked at the dragon. "You watched me carry 30 fence posts." Rex closed his eye again. "You appeared capable." Ethan shook his head and continued working. He did not notice the faint smile forming around Rex's mouth. As the dragon became stronger, more memories returned to him. He remembered the battle that had brought him to Greenfall. He remembered the ships that had surrounded him. He remembered the powerful cultivators who wanted his core. They believed that consuming the energy of a void dragon would allow them to become stronger. Rex had escaped, but barely. He knew they would not stop searching. Eventually, someone would discover his trail. That meant danger would come to Greenfall. Rex considered leaving many times. He could recover enough strength and disappear into deep space. Ethan would be safe. The farm would return to its quiet life. But whenever Rex imagined leaving, he found himself looking toward the farmhouse. Ethan would be outside, repairing something, feeding the animals, or carrying tools. The human never knew how close danger truly was. Rex told himself that leaving was the correct choice. Yet he remained. One evening, Ethan placed a bowl of food beside Rex and sat on an overturned wooden crate. The sun was setting behind the hills. Orange light spread across the sky. Rex had become large enough that his body was now almost twice the size it had been when Ethan first found him. His wings were also healing. Ethan looked at them. You getting ready to leave? Rex remained silent. Ethan nodded slowly. That's fine. You've got your own life. The dragon turned his head toward him. Would you miss me? Ethan was surprised by the question. He thought about it. Yeah, probably. Rex looked away. Ethan continued. The farm would be quieter. You enjoy noise? No, but I got used to you. The dragon said nothing. Ethan smiled slightly. Don't let it get to your head. For a long time, they watched the sunset together. Neither knew that someone was already watching the farm from high above the planet. A small silver ship floated beyond Greenfall's atmosphere. Inside, a young woman stood before a large screen covered in numbers. Her name was Mira. She was not human. Her species had pale silver skin and dark eyes adapted to low light. She worked as an independent scientist, traveling from system to system and studying unusual energy patterns. She had followed one such pattern to Greenfall. At first, she believed her scanner was broken. The readings coming from the surface were impossible. There was an energy field beneath a small farming region. Its power was increasing every day. Mira checked the numbers again. Then again. The results did not change. This cannot be right, she whispered. Her ship's computer gave a soft signal. Mira, energy levels continuing to rise. I can see that. Estimated source, unknown. Estimated threat level, unknown. Very helpful. Mira leaned closer to the screen. The source appeared to be a single piece of land. There were no military bases nearby. No ancient cities. No known alien ruins. According to the public records, the land belonged to a human farmer named Ethan Cole. Mira frowned. What are you doing down there, human? She decided to find out. The next morning, Ethan was standing beside his tractor when something crossed the sky. He looked up. A small silver ship was descending toward the edge of his property. Ethan slowly placed his wrench down. Rex appeared beside him almost immediately. The dragon's body became tense. His eyes began glowing. Do you know them? Ethan asked. No. Should I be worried? Rex watched the ship. Possibly. Ethan sighed. You always say that. Because danger is often possible. Very comforting. The ship landed beyond the fence. Its engine stopped. A door opened, and a woman stepped outside. She wore a gray travel suit and carried a small scanner. Ethan had seen many different species during his years in the human colonies, so he was not surprised by her appearance. Rex, however, remained ready to attack. Mira approached the fence and stopped when she saw the dragon. Her scanner fell from her hand. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Mira looked at Rex. Then at Ethan. Then back at Rex. Is that a void dragon? Ethan looked at Rex. That's what he calls himself. Mira slowly turned toward the farmer. You know what he is? A dragon, apparently. A void dragon. Yes. You already said that. Mira stared at him. Rex stared at Mira. Ethan looked between them. Do people normally stand around repeating the same thing? Mira finally recovered. She stepped closer to the fence. Human, do you understand how dangerous that creature is? Ethan looked at Rex. Rex looked away. Ethan folded his arms. Depends. He can be annoying. Mira looked as if Ethan had just told her the stars were made of potatoes. That creature can destroy ships. Can he repair one? Ethan asked. Rex looked at him. What? Ethan pointed toward the tractor. You stopped that metal part yesterday. Maybe you can fix the engine. Rex stared at him in disbelief. Mira stared at him in horror. The Void Dragon, one of the most feared creatures in the galaxy, was being asked to repair a farm tractor. Rex slowly turned his head away. I will not repair your machine. Worth asking. Mira took a deep breath. My name is Mira. I am an energy researcher. Ethan nodded. Ethan. Mira looked around the farm. I detected an enormous energy source coming from this location. Rex immediately moved between her and the field. You should leave. Mira froze. The dragon's voice was calm, but his meaning was clear. Ethan raised one hand. Easy. Rex looked at him. Ethan turned toward Mira. Are you here to cause trouble? No. Take anything? No. Blow up the farm? Mira looked toward the crater in the distance. Also no. The first thing Ethan noticed about the strangers was that they had terrible manners. They arrived just after sunset, destroyed one of his fence posts, frightened the chickens, and parked a black ship directly on top of a patch of grass he had spent 2 months trying to grow. Ethan stood outside his farmhouse with his hands on his hips while the ship slowly settled beyond the western field. Dust rolled across the ground. Max barked loudly beside him. Rex stood behind the barn, almost hidden by the darkness, but Ethan could feel the dragon's attention focused on the ship. Mira had warned them that someone might come. She had not expected them to arrive so quickly. "Stay behind me," she whispered. Ethan looked at her. "This is my farm." "That does not matter." "It matters to me." Rex moved closer. His claws pressed into the soil. "There are 6 life signs inside the ship." Mira checked her scanner. "Armed?" "Yes." Ethan looked toward his old storage shed. "Well, that's rude." The side door of the ship opened. 6 figures walked down the metal ramp. They were all different species, but they wore the same dark armor. Ethan had seen mercenaries before. These people moved like soldiers. The person at the front was tall and thin, with pale gray skin and a long black coat over his armor. He stopped several meters away from the fence and looked directly at Rex. His face slowly formed a smile. "There you are." Rex's body became still. Ethan noticed it immediately. The dragon had been calm around him, but now something had changed. Rex looked like a predator preparing to attack. "You know him?" Ethan asked. Rex did not answer. The stranger stepped closer. "Rex of the Void. You have caused many powerful people a great deal of trouble." Rex finally spoke. "You should have stayed away." The stranger laughed. "I would have, if you were not worth so much." Ethan looked at Mira. "Is he talking about a reward?" Mira nodded slowly. "Probably." Ethan frowned. "People really travel across space to bother an injured dragon for money?" The stranger turned toward him for the first time. His eyes moved over Ethan's simple work clothes, dirty boots, and old pulse rifle. He smiled again. "And who are you?" Ethan answered, "The owner of the land you're standing on." One of the mercenaries laughed. The others followed. Ethan did not. The tall stranger looked around the farm. "You are protecting the dragon?" Ethan shrugged. "I'm protecting my property. The dragon does not belong to you." "Didn't say he did." Ethan pointed at the damaged fence. "But this land does belong to me, and you broke that." The stranger's smile disappeared. Rex watched Ethan closely. The human knew almost nothing about the dangers standing before him. Yet he did not step back. He did not look toward the house or search for a place to hide. He simply stood there, annoyed because someone had damaged his fence. "Human," Rex said quietly, "go inside." Ethan did not move. "Why?" "Because they are dangerous." "So are you." Rex stared at him. Ethan lowered his voice. "And I let you stay." For a moment, Rex said nothing. The mercenary leader raised one hand. "Enough. We are here for the dragon. Hand him over, and we will leave this place untouched." Ethan looked toward Rex. The dragon's eyes were glowing. Then Ethan looked back at the stranger. "No." Mira closed her eyes. "Ethan." The mercenary leader looked surprised. "No. No." Ethan pointed toward the ship. "Get back in your ship, fix my fence, and leave." Silence followed. Then one of the mercenaries began laughing again. This time, the sound stopped when Ethan raised his pulse rifle and fired at the ground near the man's boots. Dirt exploded into the air. "I said leave." Rex slowly looked at Ethan. Mira also stared at him. Ethan's hands were steady. The weapon was old, but he clearly knew how to use it. The mercenary leader's face became cold. "You have made a mistake." Ethan sighed. "People keep telling me that lately." The mercenaries moved first. 2 of them jumped over the fence while the others raised their weapons. Rex released a roar that shook the ground. Blue energy exploded from his body. The nearest mercenary was thrown backward and crashed into the side of the ship. Ethan immediately fired again. He did not aim to kill. He aimed at the ground, the weapons, and the spaces around the attackers. He had spent years hunting dangerous animals on Greenfall. He knew how to make people move where he wanted them to move. Mira realized what he was doing. "He's directing them," she whispered. Ethan fired another shot. One mercenary jumped to avoid it and landed directly beside an old irrigation pipe. Ethan pressed a control button in his pocket. Water burst from the pipe with enough force to knock the mercenary off his feet. "What?" the mercenary shouted. Ethan ran toward the storage shed. You know your farm has a lot of weird equipment? Mira shouted after him. I know. Ethan reached the shed and activated several old machines at once. A harvesting drone lifted from the roof. It was designed to skin crops, but Ethan had changed its settings years ago to scare away flying predators. The drone flew toward the mercenaries, flashing bright lights and making a terrible alarm sound. Two attackers immediately raised their weapons toward it. That was exactly what Ethan wanted. Rex moved. His damaged wings opened. He crossed the field with surprising speed and struck the nearest mercenary with his tail. The attacker flew through the air and landed in a pile of loose soil. The others quickly spread out. Their leader watched from behind the fence. Interesting, he said. Mira stood beside Ethan. There are too many. Ethan checked the power level on his rifle. Then we make them think there are more of us. He ran toward the tractor. Mira followed him. What are you doing? Trust me. That is not comforting. Ethan climbed onto the old tractor and started the engine. The machine coughed loudly before coming to life. Rex looked over. Even in the middle of the fight, the dragon seemed confused. Ethan drove directly toward the field. The mercenaries stepped aside, expecting him to attack. Instead, Ethan drove through a narrow section between two rows of equipment. Behind the tractor was a trailer filled with metal tools, spare pipes, and several containers of fertilizer. Ethan pulled a lever. The trailer tilted. Everything slid onto the ground. The mercenaries suddenly found their path blocked by metal, pipes, and equipment. Seriously? One of them shouted. Ethan jumped from the tractor. You came to a farm. Farms have stuff. One mercenary raised his weapon toward him. Rex roared again, but the attacker fired first. A blast of red energy crossed the field. Ethan moved to the side, but the shot struck the ground close enough to throw him backward. He hit the soil hard. For 1 second, everything became quiet. Rex saw Ethan fall. Something ancient woke inside the dragon. The blue light around his body changed. It became darker. The ground beneath him cracked. Mira stepped back. She knew what was happening. Rex was releasing more power. Too much power could reopen his wounds, but the dragon no longer seemed to care. The mercenaries finally understood that they had made a serious mistake. Rex rose into the air. His wings created a storm of dust and broken leaves. The leader shouted, "Kill the human." 3 mercenaries turned toward Ethan. That order changed everything. Ethan pushed himself up. Blood ran down one side of his face, but his eyes were clear. He saw the attackers moving toward him. He looked around. His rifle was several meters away. The tractor stood behind him. A heavy shovel was lying near a pile of soil. Ethan reached for the shovel. Mira stared at him. What are you doing? Ethan grabbed it with both hands. Working with what I've got. The first mercenary charged. Ethan stepped forward and swung. The metal shovel hit the attacker's weapon with enough force to knock it aside. The mercenary was stronger than an ordinary human, but he had expected Ethan to run. Instead, the farmer moved directly toward him. Ethan swung again. The shovel struck the mercenary's armor. The attacker stumbled back. Ethan did not give him time to recover. He kicked the mercenary's leg and pushed him into the irrigation trench. The second attacker fired. Ethan dropped behind the tractor. The energy blast struck the machine. Sparks flew. Hey, Ethan shouted. That's my tractor. The mercenary prepared to fire again. A large shadow suddenly covered him. Rex descended from above and landed directly in front of Ethan. His claws tore through the ground. His eyes burned blue. You will not touch him. The mercenary froze. Rex opened his mouth. A wave of energy struck the attacker and threw him across the field. The final mercenary immediately began running toward the ship. Ethan watched him go. That seems reasonable. The leader, however, did not run. He stood near the ship, looking at Rex and Ethan. His expression had changed. He no longer looked amused. He looked interested. A human protecting a void dragon, he said, and a dragon protecting a human. Ethan walked forward, holding the shovel. You planning to fix that fence? The leader's eyes narrowed. Then he touched a device on his wrist. The remaining mercenaries quickly retreated. The black ship's engines activated. Rex prepared to attack, but Mira grabbed Ethan's arm. Let them go. Ethan looked at her. Why? Because they have already learned enough. The ship rose into the air. Before the door closed, the leader looked down at Ethan one final time. This is not over, farmer. Ethan raised the shovel. Next time, park somewhere else. The ship disappeared into the sky. For several minutes, Nobody spoke. Then Ethan looked around the farm. One section of his fence was destroyed. Several crops, the lights in the sky did not disappear when Ethan blinked. Instead, more appeared. At first, they looked like distant stars. Then they became larger, brighter, and impossible to ignore. Mira stood in the middle of the farm with her scanner shaking in her hand. Rex remained completely still beside her, his eyes fixed on the darkness above Greenfall. Ethan looked from one of them to the other and immediately understood that this was worse than the mercenaries who had visited before. How many? He asked. Mira swallowed. I don't know yet. Her scanner continued making sharp warning sounds. But there are several ships entering the system. Ethan looked toward the barn. Several as in 3? Mira did not answer. Ethan waited. Mira. She slowly looked at him. Several as in more than 30. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he rubbed his face. That's too many. Yes, Mira said. That is what I have been trying to tell you. Rex finally spoke. His voice was lower than usual. They are not all coming for me. Mira looked at him. What do you mean? Rex looked toward the ground beneath his claws. They know about this place. The silence that followed felt heavier than the dark sky. Ethan looked around his farm. His crops moved gently in the night wind. The repaired fence stood along the western field. His tractor still had a black mark where one of the mercenaries had fired at it. This was his home. He had worked for years to build it. Now ships were entering the system because of it. How did they find out? Ethan asked. Mira gave him an uncomfortable look. The mercenary leader sent information before leaving. Ethan sighed. Of course he did. Rex turned toward the farmhouse. You must leave Greenfall. Ethan looked at him. No. Rex's eyes narrowed. You do not understand the danger. I understand enough. 30 ships are coming to my farm. They are coming because of me. And the land. Rex did not answer. Ethan crossed his arms. So what happens if I leave? They land here, dig up the place, destroy everything, and probably fight each other over the soil? Mira slowly nodded. Most likely. Ethan pointed toward the ground. Then I'm not leaving. Rex stepped closer. Human stubbornness will not protect you. Ethan looked directly into the dragon's glowing eyes. Maybe not. But leaving won't protect the farm either. Rex opened his mouth to argue, but Ethan continued. You told me that powerful people take what they want if nobody stops them. Well, I don't like that rule. The dragon stared at him. Ethan's voice became quieter. You asked me if you could stay here. I said yes. That means something to me. Rex had no answer. Mira looked between them. She had spent enough time studying different species to understand that words often mattered less than actions. Yet Ethan had a strange habit of making simple words feel heavier than promises made by kings. You can stay. That was all he had said. But now the entire farm was preparing for war because he meant it. Rex looked away. Then we will defend it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. We? Rex slowly turned back toward him. The dragon's body began changing. His scales moved as if something powerful was waking beneath them. Blue energy traveled across his wings. His damaged body grew larger. The earth shook as his claws pressed deeper into the ground. Ethan took one step backward. Okay, he said. That's new. Rex's form continued expanding. His body became taller than the barn. His wings spread across the field. The small creature Ethan had dragged from the crater was gone. In his place stood a true dragon. His horns rose toward the sky. His teeth were long enough to tear through metal. Dark scales covered a body powerful enough to crush a ground vehicle with a single step. Myra's scanner stopped working. She looked at it. Then she looked at Rex. It overloaded. Ethan slowly turned toward her. Is that bad? Yes. You say that a lot. Rex opened his wings completely. The movement created a powerful wind that bent the crops. Ethan immediately pointed at the field. Careful. The dragon froze. Ethan glared at him. The crops. Rex looked down at the damaged plants. His massive eyes showed something close to embarrassment. He slowly folded his wings. Mira stared at both of them. Did you just scold a void dragon for damaging vegetables? Ethan looked at her. They take time to grow. Rex lowered his head. I will repair the damage. Ethan nodded. Good. For the next few minutes, Mira could only watch in silence as one of the most powerful creatures in the galaxy carefully used glowing energy to repair broken plants. The absurd situation ended when a deep sound rolled across the sky. The first ships were entering the atmosphere. Mira quickly moved toward her equipment. We need a plan. Ethan looked toward his barn. I have one. Mira turned toward him. Please tell me it does not involve the tractor. Ethan remained silent. Mira closed her eyes. It involves the tractor. It's a good tractor. Rex lowered his massive head toward Ethan. You cannot fight these people as you fought the mercenaries. Ethan nodded. Probably not. Then why are you smiling? Ethan looked toward the fields. Because they know about you. They know about the land. They know about Myra's scanner. He pointed toward the farmhouse. But they don't know me. Mira slowly understood. You want to surprise them. Ethan smiled. That's usually the best way to deal with people who show up uninvited. The next hour became the strangest night in the history of Greenfall. Mira used her technology to hide energy signals around the farm. Rex created barriers beneath the ground. Ethan moved equipment from one side of the property to another. Old drones were activated. Irrigation pipes were connected to pressure systems. Empty storage containers were placed across open fields. Mira eventually stopped asking what he was doing. Why are you putting a metal bucket on top of that pole? She asked. Ethan tightened a bolt. You'll see. That is not an answer. It'll make noise. Mira stared at him. We are facing an invasion force. Exactly. Loud noises might confuse them. Rex watched from above. Your strategy is strange. Ethan smiled. It's working so far. Rex looked toward the ships descending from the sky. They have not attacked yet. Ethan paused. Details. By midnight, the ships had formed a wide circle around the farm. Their lights filled the sky. Several were small and fast, but others were massive enough to block the stars. The largest ship opened a communication channel. A voice spread across the valley. Occupants of the farming settlement. You are ordered to leave the area immediately. Ethan stood in front of the farmhouse. Rex remained hidden behind a line of hills. Mira stood beside Ethan with a small communication device. The voice continued. The land has been placed under the authority of Lord Vark. Ethan whispered, Who is Lord Vark? Myra's face became serious. One of the strongest cultivators in this region. Does he own the land? No. Ethan pressed the communication button. Then why is he telling me to leave? There was a short silence. The voice returned. Because resistance will not be tolerated. Ethan looked at Mira. That's not really an answer. Rex made a low sound behind the hill. Ethan continued speaking into the device. This is private property. You can send a legal request if you want to talk about it. The communication channel became silent again. Mira slowly turned toward Ethan. You challenged Lord Vark with property law? Ethan shrugged. I like rules. The answer came seconds later. You have 1 hour to leave. The channel closed. Ethan looked around. Well, that's disappointing. Mira grabbed his arm. Ethan, this is serious. I know. Lord Vark can destroy armies. Then let's not give him an army. Rex stepped forward from behind the hill. His true form was impossible to hide now. The ships immediately reacted. Weapons turned toward him. Energy readings across Myra's scanner rose sharply. The dragon looked toward Ethan. There is still time for you to leave. Ethan shook his head. No. Rex's eyes became softer. Why? Ethan looked at the farm. Because this place was empty when I came here. I built this home. I worked this land. You came here injured, and I helped you. Mira came here confused, and now she's helping us. This is our problem now. Mira looked away for a moment. Rex remained silent. Ethan picked up his pulse rifle. Besides, if I leave every time someone stronger tells me to move, I'll never have a home anywhere. The hour ended. The first attack began with a single blast of light from the sky. Mira shouted a warning. Rex moved first. His wings opened, and a blue barrier appeared above the farm. The attack struck the barrier. The entire valley shook. Ethan almost fell but caught himself against the fence. That's a lot bigger than the last guy's. Mira looked at him. You think? More attacks followed. Rex's barrier shook under the force. Blue cracks spread across the air. Ethan looked toward the irrigation controls. Mira, she immediately understood. Already moving. She ran toward the equipment while Ethan jumped onto the tractor. Mira stared at him. Of course. Ethan started the engine. The tractor moved across the field, pulling a heavy metal trailer. Above them, enemy soldiers began descending from small ships. They landed across the valley. Some carried energy weapons. Others wore armor covered in glowing symbols. Mira quickly activated the irrigation system. Water exploded from pipes across the farm. The attackers expected walls, weapons, and military defenses. They did not expect the ground to become thick mud. Several soldiers lost their balance immediately. Ethan drove the tractor directly through the center of the field, creating deep tracks in the wet soil. The enemy soldiers, the first thing Lord Vark saw when his ship entered Greenfall's atmosphere was a burning barn, a broken fence, and a human farmer standing in the middle of the destruction with a pulse rifle in one hand. Vark had expected to find a battlefield. He had expected powerful warriors, ancient defenses, or perhaps a hidden cultivation sect protecting the strange land. Instead, he found a farm. Yet something about the scene made him pause. Hundreds of his soldiers surrounded the property. Warships covered the sky. A void dragon stood beside the farmhouse with his wings spread wide. And in front of them all stood a human who looked more annoyed than afraid. Lord Vark's personal ship descended slowly from the clouds. It was much larger than the other ships. Its dark metal surface reflected the light from the burning barn. The soldiers immediately moved aside when it landed. The main door opened, and a single figure stepped onto the ground. He was not large. In fact, he looked almost ordinary. He wore long black robes with thin golden lines. His hair was dark, and his face was calm. But the moment his boots touched the ground, the air changed. Ethan felt it immediately. The strange energy inside his body reacted. His arms became heavy. The soil beneath his feet trembled. Rex lowered his body and released a warning growl. Mira stepped closer to Ethan. "That is Lord Vark." Ethan looked at the man walking toward them. "Doesn't look very impressive." Mira stared at him. "Ethan, what? Please stop saying things like that before powerful people try to kill us." Ethan nodded slowly. "Fair point." Lord Vark stopped several meters away. His eyes moved first toward Rex, then toward Mira. Finally, they settled on Ethan. The powerful cultivator smiled. "You are the human." Ethan looked behind himself. "I think so." Vark's smile disappeared for half a second. He was clearly not used to people answering him like that. "You have caused considerable trouble." Ethan looked around at the damaged farm. "You're standing in the middle of my trouble." Several soldiers moved their hands toward their weapons. Vark raised one hand, stopping them. He continued watching Ethan. "You do not understand what you possess." Ethan glanced toward the ground. "A farm. Power." Ethan looked at Rex. "He's talking about the energy thing again." Rex did not answer. Vark slowly stepped closer. "This land is sitting above an ancient source of cultivation energy. Energy that has remained hidden from the galaxy for thousands of years. But that is not the most interesting thing." His eyes returned to Ethan. "You have awakened." Mira tightened her grip on her scanner. Ethan looked down at his hands. The faint light from before had disappeared, but he could still feel something inside him. It was like warmth beneath his skin. It moved when he breathed. It became stronger whenever he focused. "I don't know what happened," Ethan said. Vark smiled again. "I do." Rex moved forward. "Stay away from him." Vark finally looked at the dragon. "Rex, still protecting someone weaker than yourself. I never thought I would see such a thing." The dragon's eyes glowed. "You know nothing." Vark laughed softly. "I know enough. I know that you are wounded. I know that your enemies are searching for you. And now I know that you have found something far more valuable than yourself." Ethan frowned. "I don't like the way you keep talking about me like I'm a tool." Vark turned back toward him. "You are not a tool, human. You are a discovery." Ethan did not like that answer either. Lord Vark raised one hand, and a small stone lifted from the ground. It floated between them. Every species in the galaxy has its limits. Some are born with powerful energy. Some develop it through special techniques. Some inherit it from ancient bloodlines. Humanity has none of these advantages. Mira looked at Ethan. Rex remained silent. Vark continued. "Your species comes from a harsh world. A world with little cultivation energy. Your ancestors survived by adapting. Their bodies became stronger through struggle." The floating stone slowly turned. But something was hidden inside that adaptation. Something ancient. Ethan crossed his arms. "Can you explain it in normal words?" Vark looked annoyed. "Your body grows stronger when you face hardship." Ethan shrugged. "Yeah, that's called work." Vark stared at him. Ethan continued. "Carry heavy things, you get stronger. Work every day, you get better. Get hurt. Heal. Learn not to do the same stupid thing again." Mira slowly looked at her scanner. "He's right." Vark's eyes narrowed. "You do not understand. You have been cultivating your entire life without knowing it." Ethan was silent. Rex looked at him carefully. Suddenly, small memories returned to Ethan's mind. Years of work. Carrying equipment. Digging through hard soil. Walking for hours beneath heavy rain. surviving cold nights when his heating system failed, fighting dangerous animals that entered his property. Every difficult day had changed him. He had simply never thought about it. The farm, Mira whispered. The energy beneath the land made the process faster. Rex understood before Ethan did. Every day he worked here, the energy entered his body. Vark nodded. Exactly. Ethan looked at the ground beneath his boots. So I've been getting stronger because I was farming? Yes. Ethan looked toward his damaged tractor. That explains why I could lift that engine last month. Mira slowly turned toward him. You lifted an engine? Ethan shrugged. It was stuck. Vark's patience finally disappeared. Enough. His voice shook the valley. The soldiers became silent. Ethan looked back at him. You were saying? Vark pointed toward the farmhouse. You will surrender the land. You will come with me. The dragon will be taken alive. If you cooperate, I will allow your people to remain untouched. Ethan stared at him. Then he looked at Mira. Did he just threaten humanity? Mira nodded. Yes. Ethan looked at Rex. Is he allowed to do that? Rex's claws dug into the soil. No. Ethan faced Vark again. Then no. The answer was simple. So simple that Vark did not react at first. No. Ethan nodded. No. The cultivator's eyes became cold. You are refusing me? You came here, destroyed my farm, threatened my friends, and now you want my land. So yes. Ethan raised his pulse rifle. No. Lord Vark moved faster than Ethan could see. One moment, he was standing several meters away. The next, he was directly in front of Ethan. Mira shouted. Rex attacked. Vark lifted one hand, and an invisible force struck Rex in the chest. The dragon was thrown backward. His massive body crashed through the side of the damaged barn. Ethan reacted without thinking. He swung his rifle toward Vark, but the weapon stopped in the air before reaching him. Vark grabbed Ethan by the throat and lifted him from the ground. Ethan kicked and struggled, but Vark's grip did not move. This is why the weak should understand their place, Vark said quietly. Ethan's vision became blurry. He could feel the strange energy inside him moving wildly. For the first time, he stopped treating it like something strange. He focused on it. He remembered the years of work, the pain in his arms after carrying heavy equipment, the long days under the sun, the cold rain, the injuries, the moments when he had fallen and stood back up because there was nobody else to finish the work. Something inside him answered. The ground beneath Vark's feet cracked. The cultivator looked down. Ethan's hand grabbed Vark's wrist. At first, Vark did not seem concerned. Then his expression changed. Ethan's fingers tightened. The powerful cultivator felt the human's strength increasing. Ethan pulled himself downward. Vark tried to hold him, but the human's body was becoming heavier. His boots touched the ground. Ethan took a breath. Then he punched Vark in the chest. The sound was like a hammer striking metal. Vark flew backward. Every soldier in the valley became silent. Mira stared at Ethan. Rex slowly climbed out of the barn. The void dragon looked shocked. Ethan looked at his own hand. That felt different. Vark stopped in the air and landed several meters away. His robes were damaged. His calm expression was gone. Interesting, he whispered. Ethan raised his fists. People keep saying that too. Vark attacked again. This time, Ethan saw him coming. He moved aside, but barely. Vark's fist passed close to his face and struck the ground behind him. The earth exploded. Ethan turned and swung. Vark blocked the attack. Their fists collided. Pain rushed through Ethan's arm, but he did not stop. He stepped forward and attacked again. Vark was still faster, still more skilled, still far more powerful. Every time Ethan tried to strike him, Vark moved. Every time Ethan was hit, he was thrown backward. But then he stood up. Again and again. Rex watched with growing realization. His energy is adapting. Mira checked her scanner. The numbers were rising. Every time Vark attacks him, Ethan's body is changing. Rex's eyes widened. He is cultivating through the battle. Mira looked terrified. That should not be possible. Rex looked toward Ethan. Humans. Vark also understood what was happening. That was why his calmness finally broke. He attacked harder. Ethan was thrown through a fence. He crashed into the soil. Vark moved toward him. Stay down. Ethan slowly stood. His face was covered in dirt. No. Vark struck him again. Ethan fell against the tractor. Metal bent beneath the impact. Mira shouted his name. Rex tried to move forward, but several powerful barriers appeared around him. Vark had trapped the dragon. Stay down. Vark shouted. Ethan wiped blood from his mouth. He looked at the tractor. His hand rested against its damaged metal surface. He remembered buying the old machine. Everyone had told him to purchase something new. The first human ship landed beside Ethan's farm before he had finished repairing the western fence, and by the end of the day, 12 more had appeared in the valley. Ethan stood on top of a wooden post with a hammer in his hand and stared at the growing collection of ships. Some were small civilian transports. Some belonged to human scientists. Others carried reporters, engineers, soldiers, and ordinary people who simply wanted to see the place where a human farmer had fought Lord Vark and survived. Ethan slowly climbed down from the fence. No. Mira looked up from her scanner. No what? Ethan pointed at the ships. No more people. Mira glanced toward the valley. I don't think you have much control over that now. Ethan looked toward Rex. The enormous void dragon was lying beside the damaged barn. Can you scare them away? Rex opened one glowing eye. Yes. Ethan thought about it. Without eating anyone. Rex closed his eye again. Then no. Ethan sighed. Max barked at one of the arriving ships. Several chickens ran past Ethan's boots. Everything was becoming louder, more crowded, and much less peaceful. That was exactly what Ethan had wanted to escape when he came to Greenfall. He looked at the damaged farmhouse, the broken fences, and the distant ships. I miss being unknown. Mira smiled. You punched one of the most powerful cultivators in this region into his own ship. He started it. Rex made a low sound that was almost laughter. Ethan pointed toward him. Don't start. The first group of visitors reached the farm an hour later. They were all human. A middle-aged woman stepped forward and introduced herself as Dr. Lena. She was followed by several researchers carrying scanners and equipment. Behind them stood a group of younger humans who looked both nervous and excited. Ethan folded his arms. Are you all here to look at my farm? Dr. Lena looked around at the strange energy moving through the air. Among other things. Ethan frowned. I don't like the sound of that. Mira stepped beside the scientist and showed her several readings. The two began discussing Ethan's energy, the land, and the battle with Lord Vark. Ethan listened for several minutes before holding up a hand. Can somebody explain what is happening in simple words? Dr. Lena looked at him. You awakened an ability that may exist in every human. Ethan was silent. Every human? Possibly. Mira nodded. Your species developed in an environment where spiritual energy was almost absent. Human bodies learned to improve through physical effort, stress, survival, and adaptation. The energy beneath this farm accelerated a process that was already possible. Ethan looked confused. So humans get stronger by doing difficult things? Dr. Lena nodded. Ethan scratched his head. That sounds normal. Mira smiled. To humans, perhaps. The researchers began studying the farm. Ethan allowed them to take samples from the soil, plants, and water, but he gave them strict rules. They were not allowed to damage the crops. They were not allowed to disturb the animals. And nobody was allowed to enter Rex's area without permission. One young scientist laughed when Ethan said that. Then Rex opened one eye and looked directly at him. The scientist immediately agreed. Within 3 days, something even stranger happened. Several humans began showing signs of energy awakening. A mechanic named Ben spent hours helping Ethan repair the barn. On the second day, he accidentally lifted a metal beam that normally required 2 people. He stared at it for a long time. Ethan looked at him. You okay? Ben slowly lowered the beam. I think I just became stronger. Ethan nodded. Congratulations. Keep working. A woman named Sarah spent most of her time helping Mira repair damaged equipment. After days without giving up, she began seeing faint lines of energy moving around the machines. Mira nearly dropped her scanner. The news spread quickly. Other humans were experiencing changes too. Workers on distant colonies reported unusual strength. Soldiers recovered faster after training. Engineers discovered that some of them could sense energy inside damaged machines. Farmers began reporting faster reactions and stronger bodies. Nobody understood the full reason, but everyone knew that something had changed. Humanity had discovered cultivation. And unlike the ancient species that relied on secret techniques, expensive resources, or powerful bloodlines, humans had apparently been doing part of it their entire lives. They worked. They struggled. They survived. And now they were beginning to understand that every difficult day had been preparing them for something greater. The rest of the galaxy did not react well. Some governments sent messages asking for peaceful cooperation. Others demanded information about Greenfall. A few offered money, technology, and protection in exchange for access to the land. Ethan rejected most of them before Mira even finished reading the messages. No. This one is offering a trade agreement. No. This one wants to build a research center. Absolutely not. This one says they are peaceful. Ethan looked at the message. Did they bring warships? Mira checked. Yes. Then they're not peaceful. Rex watched the conversation with growing amusement. Ethan eventually created a large wooden sign at the edge of his property. It had only 4 words written on it. Private farm. Do not land. Beneath that, he added another line. Dragon present. The sign became famous across the galaxy. For a short time, the warnings worked. Then another message arrived. Mira was standing beside Ethan when her scanner began flashing red. Rex immediately rose from the ground. Ethan looked at the device. What now? Myra's face became serious. Lord Vark. The valley became silent. The researchers stopped working. Several human soldiers reached for their weapons. Ethan looked toward the sky. A single ship had entered the system. It was badly damaged. Mira checked the signal again. It's only one ship. Rex's wings slowly opened. That does not make him less dangerous. Ethan picked up his pulse rifle. Nobody touched the crops. The ship descended slowly. It did not land on the farm. Instead, it stopped several kilometers away. A small figure left the ship and began walking toward the property. Lord Vark was alone. Ethan stood beside Rex and Mira as the cultivator approached. Vark looked worse than before. His robes were damaged. His face was pale. There was no army behind him. No soldiers waited in the sky. He stopped outside the fence. Ethan looked at him. You planning to break another one? Vark stared at the human farmer. No. Ethan waited. That's new. Vark ignored the comment. His eyes moved across the farm. Humans were working everywhere. Some carried equipment. Others were studying the soil. A few had faint energy around their bodies. Vark's expression became darker. It is happening faster than I expected. Mira stepped forward. Humanity is awakening. Vark looked at her. And that is why I came. Rex released a low growl. You should have stayed away. Vark looked toward the dragon. I would have, if there were another choice. Ethan noticed something unusual. Vark was not acting like the man who had attacked the farm. He looked worried. Truly worried. Ethan crossed his arms. Talk. Vark remained silent for several seconds. Then he looked toward the sky. The Galactic Council has made a decision. Myra's face changed. What decision? Vark answered. They believe humanity must be controlled before it becomes too powerful. Ethan frowned. Controlled how? Vark looked directly at him. By force. The simple answer changed the air around the farm. Rex's claws pressed into the ground. Human soldiers moved closer. Myra's scanner began flashing as communication signals arrived from across the system. Vark continued. The Council fears what humans may become. They have seen the recordings of your battle. They know other humans are awakening. Some members want an alliance. Others believe humanity is a threat that must be stopped now. Ethan looked toward the distant hills. And which side are you on? Vark did not answer immediately. I once believed power belonged to those strong enough to take it. His eyes moved toward Ethan. You changed my understanding. Ethan raised an eyebrow. By punching you? Vark looked annoyed. Among other things. Rex made another sound that was clearly laughter this time. Vark continued. A fleet is coming. Not for the dragon. Not for the land. For humanity. Mira checked her scanner. Her face became pale. How long? Vark answered. 3 days. Everyone became silent. Ethan looked around his farm. 3 days earlier, he had been worried about rebuilding his barn. Now he was being told that a galactic fleet was coming because humans had started becoming stronger. He looked toward Rex. Can you fight them? Rex was silent. Ethan understood the answer. Not alone. Mira stepped forward. We need to contact the human colonies. Dr. Lena immediately began sending messages. Human ships across the planet received the warning. Then more signals arrived from distant systems. Ethan expected fear. He expected some people to leave Greenfall immediately. Instead, ships began changing direction toward the planet. Human workers arrived first. Then engineers. Then civilian pilots. Soldiers came from nearby colonies. Farmers brought heavy machinery. Mechanics brought repair equipment. Nobody knew exactly what would happen, but they came anyway. Ethan watched the valley fill with humans. He had spent years living alone. Now thousands of people were standing on and around his farm. He was not sure how to feel about it. Ben walked beside him. We need to build defenses. Ethan looked at the empty fields. Not through the crops. Ben smiled.